accomplished. Oh, right.
Sorry. Thank you, Sue. Sorry.
I'm Sue Baldock, and I'm a trustee of Accomplished Children's Trust, which aims to reach children with disabilities in rural Africa. And I'd like to tell you Godfrey's story. Godfrey was born blind in a village in the large and very poor Ruwenzori region of Western Uganda. This picture was taken in 2008, 15 years ago. At that time, there was no education available at all for blind or deaf children in the whole of this vast region. Disabled children were treated, and still are treated, as worthless and useless. So most Ugandans couldn't see the point of educating them. A few parents who thought differently gathered together for mutual support and called themselves, wait for it, here goes, long title, the Ruwenzori Association of Parents of Children with Disabilities. So we call it RAPCD for short. RAPCD approached the newly founded Accomplished Children's Trust with their dream to provide education for these children. And together, RAPCD and Accomplished built a classroom. Early in 2010, with a huge leap of faith, the RAPCD primary school for deaf or blind children was opened. As you can see, with the desks piled high, this classroom was also many other things. It was a dormitory, a kitchen, a dining room, a bathroom. It was very basic. There was no running water, but just look at those smiles. Rebecca Cornish, MBE, is the founder of Accomplish, and she's also my daughter. The Reverend Marley Wilson is the leader of RAPCD, a truly visionary man who has a son with cerebral palsy. Both feel God is at the centre of this school and the work it does teaching and reaching out to families. Back in 2010, there were 15 pioneer pupils. 13 were deaf, and there are far more deaf children in this region than blind children. The two blind pupils were Godfrey, seen here, ready to start his great adventure, and his friend, Jeremiah, and they're now both firm friends. This gorgeous blind girl is Solange, giving her brother Godfrey a smiling send-off, and we'll hear a bit more about her later. The next thing to build was a pit latrine, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later as well. By 2012, more classrooms had been built and more pupils had arrived. The news about this school was spreading. School uniforms were introduced, and the cowed, isolated children who arrive at this school were discovering the vibrant and enthusiastic child who'd been locked within. The staff think it takes about a year to unlock this, the real child inside. And here is Godfrey in 2012, who could by then speak confidently in English, which is Uganda's national language. And this is his friend Jeremiah, who was also thriving at the RAPCD schools. And Jeremiah was learning to play the keyboard. Both boys went on to become head boys at the school. Basic Braille was started. As the school developed, so did the aspirations for these children. Medical Missionary News stepped in with a grant for Braille books and equipment, enabling growth from this to this. Quite a transformation, which was and still is so much appreciated by the blind pupils and the Braille teachers. But aspirations kept growing as secondary education for some of these pupils became a natural desire. So in 2015, Accomplish and RAPCD took another huge leap in faith and started building St Agnes's secondary school. And it opened early in 2016 with 40 pupils. This is an integrated school which specialises in teaching deaf or blind pupils in line with the Ugandan Ministry of Education policy, a policy which is working brilliantly at St Agnes, which now has 250 pupils, as able-bodied children help those with disabilities, and they become firm friends. So the future looks quite bright. And here is Godfrey at St Agnes's school. It's basic, it's unfinished, but it's brilliant. In 2019, there was great rejoicing as 32 RAPCD pupils were confirmed. This ceremony was attended by so many people. Now, this is a testimony to the outreach work done by teams from RAPCD and also teams from the school, which is slowly, very, very slowly, definitely changing attitudes towards disability. The pupils are actually their own ambassadors. For instance, groups of pupils regularly visit local churches where congregations are blown away by deaf children singing in sign and blind children reading from their Braille Bible and playing musical instruments. Daily Christian worship at both schools, although encouraged, is not compulsory, but rarely missed by any of the pupils. But then in 2020, both schools had to close due to COVID restrictions. Closures which lasted for 22 months, the longest school closures anywhere in the world. Life back in the villages was tough, as markets could not be accessed. Malnutrition is a constant problem, especially for children with disabilities. But during these COVID years, this situation slid into severe and life-threatening malnutrition. In addition, this region experienced devastating floods, which washed away many homes, and families lost what meagre possessions they had. Medical missionary news stepped in with flood relief, as you can see, and food aid. It's not easy for us to appreciate the hardships these families faced during this time, but believe me, this aid truly saved lives. The schools were finally reopened in February 2022 with renewed enthusiasm and more pupils. And Jeremiah was married. He's the first RAPCD pupil to get married, a seemingly impossible dream back in 2008. He is an accomplished pianist, as seen on national television. I mean, that's miraculous. A skill, as we have seen it, he learnt at the RAPCD schools. He now makes a living playing at special events such as weddings. In his end of school national exams, Jeremiah achieved one of the top marks in the whole country. Both he and Godfrey are now studying at a more advanced school and hope to become teachers themselves. So much for being useless. And what a transformation from 2008. And that brings us to the present day. Each school now has several pit latrines, needed, of course, with so many pupils. During 2023, The main ones at both schools will be replaced by septic tanks, thanks to a grant from Medical Missionary News. These are more hygienic and also safer for blind children to use. MMN is also helping to meet the recent huge increase in food costs, ensuring the pupils get regular, they're very basic meals, but they do get regular meals. This lovely girl, excuse me, is Solange, Godfrey's sister. You remember that little girl right at the beginning? She's now at the RAPCD primary school and hopes to move on to St Agnes's school next year. Of the 200 pupils at the primary school, 13 this year, at the moment, are blind. And you can glimpse from this photograph of Solange that the school has changed a great deal from that first basic classroom. And this is St Agnes's school. It's looking good. Still not finished, but it's looking good. Of course, there are hundreds more blind children and thousands more deaf children still to reach. But this school, with God at its centre, has moved mountains for several hundred children already, including Godfrey, Jeremiah and Solange. MMN has played a vital part in this transformation of lives, and thank you. Thank you so much. There are some prayer points that I have put forward, but before I go through those, could I also add a prayer request for our project in Malawi called the Heart of Mercy Project near Zomba, which has been hit by Cyclone Freddy. We are awaiting news because villages are inaccessible. The cyclone has calmed down now, and so the villages are beginning to be visited, but it's going to be devastating. So please pray for those as the picture unfolds. It's the Heart of Mercy Project in Malawi, and Medical Missionary News has been very much part of developing that project. So back to Uganda and the RAPCD schools. Please give thanks to God for the amazing development during the last decade of the RAPCD primary school and the growth of St Agnes's secondary school. And give God the thanks for the RAPCD team led by Reverend Marley Wilson, which runs these schools, and the outreach to surrounding villages. They're small teams, small RAPCD teams visit hundreds of families in remote, quite mountainous villages, visiting disabled children and their families. And the dedication of the staff at the RAPCD school is amazing. They are really a beacon in the area, reaching disabled children. And the partnership that we have with Medical Missionary News is just amazing and wonderful. And it's strengthened the work of the schools. And if you could pray for the blind pupils at these schools, their futures as they leave the schools, their families who are brave enough to want their children to be educated, and the attitudes towards blindness and other disabilities, that they will continue to be more and more accepting, and for Accomplished Children's Trust as we continue to support these schools. And thank you so, so much. Your prayers are the foundation of all that happens and all that we do.